I currently see homebuyers making the same mistakes over and over again. That's not only making it difficult, but almost impossible to buy a home in the 2024 housing market. And that's exactly what we're going to go over in today's video. We're going to go over the common mistakes that I see these home buyers make that's not only making it difficult for them to buy a home, and quite honestly, if they keep repeating these mistakes, they may never find success when it comes to buying a home. So if you're a home buyer out there in the 2024 housing market, you want to make sure that you pay close attention to what I talk about in this video so that when the right home presents itself, you put yourself in the best position possible to take advantage of it. Now, before we dive into the meat of today's video, I'd like to ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor and smash that like button. And while you're doing that, feel free to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on everything real estate related. Finding success as a home buyer in the 2024 housing market isn't some walk in the park, and that's primarily because we still have way more buyer demand than we have available homes for sale, which means in many markets out there, it's still very, very competitive when it comes to buying a home. Now, something I always like to point out in these videos is that real estate is local. If you're in a state like Texas or Florida where inventory has increased significantly year over year, you may not have the problems that we're talking about in today's video. But here in Southern California where I'm located, we are still struggling when it comes to the number of homes on the market. Therefore, when a home is priced correctly, it's not only receiving multiple offers, but it's also going above the asking price. So the question is, how do you set yourself up for success in these situations to come out on top? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into right now. The very first mistake that I want to touch on at the moment is a mistake that I see a lot of home buyers making at the moment. And that is that they have a property to sell and they need the equity from that property in order to purchase the new home, which isn't a mistake in itself. But the mistake comes when the home buyer finds the perfect property and they haven't set up a plan to actually sell their current residence and or refinance and take the equity out to purchase that new home, which makes it near impossible to get your offer accepted because you're in a multiple offer situation. And oftentimes you're competing against home buyers that don't have any contingencies at all. And in many cases, these buyers already have the cash in their bank account, so they don't have to worry about selling a property and or refinancing a property and taking cash out of that property in order to buy the next home. And from a seller's perspective, this makes your offer way less desirable because it leaves the seller with uncertainty. They don't know when it's actually going to close, if it's going to go into escrow, if your loan is going to be approved. And I can say this as an agent for nearly 20 years. In fact, I have a couple of buyers at the moment. One of them is a really good friend and he's looking to buy a new home. But unfortunately, he started the process with me by telling me, hey, Jeb, I found a property that me and my fiance want to see. And after viewing the home, they decided that they're ready to make an offer on it. But guess what? They only qualify to buy that home if they sell their current residence because they need all of the equity in that property to put down as the down payment on the new home in order to get approved for the loan. And that may not seem like a big problem, but it is, especially when you're starting from ground zero when it comes to listing that other home. We haven't taken photos yet. We haven't gotten the property ready yet, which in turn makes our offer less desirable. In fact, the seller came back after we submitted an offer saying that our offer was contingent and that we're ready to list the home, basically saying that, hey, in order for us to even consider something like this, you need to have your home on the market. And they even took it a step further, saying that they would actually like to see the home in escrow before considering our offer, which means now we're actually scrambling to take photos on the property, get it ready to list, and put it on the market so we don't risk losing the property that they've fallen in love with. So the question is, how can I correct this mistake? Well, if you're already having those conversations with your spouse, with your bride, with your husband, with your partner about potentially moving, and you're out there looking at properties and you're thinking to yourself, hey, if the right property presents itself, I think we're in a position to sell our home and be ready to move. Well, then that's a conversation you need to have with your real estate agent, even if you're not super serious about it yet, so that you can set up a plan to put yourself in the best position possible. And while no one wants to list their home for sale and actually sell it without having a place to go, you can put your home on the market and accept an offer with the contingency of you being able to find a replacement home, which means if you put your home on the market, somebody comes in and offers a price that you're willing to accept, you don't necessarily have to close on that property until you found a property to move into, which I can understand from a buyer's perspective. Buying that property, you don't really want to buy a home where the seller hasn't found a replacement home. But in the case of my property, my sellers have found not only one home, but maybe 2, possibly even 3 homes that they're interested in making an offer on, but because their home isn't on the market yet, we're kind of delayed in the process. So they could have put themselves in a better position by listing their home with that contingency to sell it, so that when the right home did come to the market, they were in a better position to make a more aggressive offer. So if you're a home buyer out there at the moment and you've got a property to sell, you absolutely need to be having that conversation with a real estate agent now and not waiting until you find the right home. Now, if you're watching this, you don't have a real estate agent, you don't have someone you can trust, do me a favor and reach out to me directly. If you're local, my team and I would love to guide you through that process. If you're anywhere else in the United States, there's a referral link in the description where I'm happy to refer you to one of my referral partners that does business just like I do. But the main point I want to stress here is that you can't be too ready in this environment because it is still very, very competitive out there. And that's going to take me into the next mistake I see a lot of home buyers making, and that's their unwillingness to compromise on a home's condition. I realize as a buyer, after watching HGTV for the better part of 3 to 4 years during the pandemic, you've fallen in love with a certain type of property. But unfortunately, that's the same type of property that everyone has fallen in love with. So when those homes come on the market, they're priced correctly, guess what? They're the homes with the most people through the open houses, with people making offers. They're also the most homes where the homes go above the asking price, which means from a buyer's perspective, you may have to be willing to do things that you wouldn't normally do in order to get your offer considered. So instead of getting caught up in the hoopla of all of that, I think from a buyer's perspective, you should start to consider homes that maybe don't meet everything that you're looking for. Now, I'm a real estate agent telling you, you should never sacrifice on your non-negotiables. And what I mean by that is if you need a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath in a certain school district, then you shouldn't compromise on that. But if you're one of those home buyers that says, hey, I want an open kitchen and I want hardwood flooring and I want a big slider open to the backyard or a swimming pool, well, then you may need to sacrifice on some of these things in order to put yourself in a more competitive situation. Because inventory is still a problem pretty much nationwide, you need to be willing to give up on some things in order to put yourself in a better position. And by sacrificing on some of these things, you're probably going to open up more available options when it comes to inventory, which means you have more homes to choose from. And in turn, a higher probability of getting your offer accepted, because now maybe you have 10 properties that you can choose from and put offers on versus only 1. Now, I know a lot of home buyers will watch this and go, Jeb, I don't want to sacrifice on anything. If that's what I have to do, then I don't want to buy a house. I completely understand. But what I will tell you is that most people buying a home as their first home, it's not their forever home. It's not going to be a home that you're going to be in forever. Just use it as a stepping stone. Take time, save money, make that home your own. By altering the condition of that property, you're going to add value over time, which probably means you're going to gain more equity long term versus buying the perfect one to start with. So as a home buyer, start with your list of non-negotiables, but be willing to sacrifice and maybe compromise on some of the other things in order to put yourself in a better position. And the next one I want to talk about kind of goes along with the last one, but it's setting unrealistic expectations for yourself. A lot of home buyers out there have friends that bought homes with super low interest rates. They bought homes where they've appreciated 20, 30, 40% over the last couple of years. In fact, they were able to buy the perfect home during that time. And there's a lot of buyers out there right now that are expecting to find and do the exact same thing without having to make any sacrifice. So as I mentioned, it kind of goes back to what we talked about a moment ago. Be willing to sacrifice on some of the things that maybe you can alter over time. And by doing that, you're probably going to have a better home buying experience. Now, the next one I want to talk about is something I see happen in every single market. And that's home buyers starting the home buying process by just going out and looking at homes. They decide, hey, my family, we're ready. We just got married, we're having a kid, or we're having a second kid. We can no longer rent this property. We're ready to go looking for a home. And that's exactly what they do. They start looking at Redfin, they start looking at Zillow, they start going to open houses, they see everything they like, they're looking at different price ranges, and they fall in love with a property. But here's where the mistake comes in. They haven't actually done the pre-approval to find out if they're in a position to actually purchase a home, which is honestly a recipe for disaster, because buying a home is already an emotional process in and of itself. And the last thing you want to do is add additional emotion on top of it by falling in love with something and the idea of moving to find out that you're not actually approved to buy a home. So take the time before you're ready to submit the paperwork. Maybe you're already out looking and you're this person now. Stop the process and call a mortgage professional, have the conversation, do the loan application, let them run your credit, provide the documentation, the W-2s, your pay stub, your checking account balances, your driver's license, all of that information. It shouldn't cost you any money to go through this process. And by doing this, the lender is going to review the information and tell you, yeah, you're good to buy a home, and they should be able to give you an idea of price point, how much you're approved up to purchase. And what this does for you as a home buyer is it gives you certainty in the process. Now you know that you're pre-approved. Yeah, things can go wrong after that process, but more importantly, it says, hey, look, right now, you're in a position to go out looking at homes. This is the price range that you should stay in. And so that way you're not out looking in price ranges well above what you're approved for. Because what I will tell you is the higher price range you look in, the more of the list you're going to be able to check off. And hopefully as a buyer, you can get approved in that price range. But oftentimes buyers are overestimating what they're going to be approved for, and they're looking at price ranges well above where they actually qualify. So before starting the home buying process, take some time and have that conversation. It really shouldn't delay you starting to go look at homes. In fact, it should only take a day, maybe two, to go through that process unless you have a super complicated file. Well, if you're watching this and you don't know where to start, I put a referral link in the description below where you can work directly with me and my team pretty much anywhere in the United States. So if you're interested in going through the pre-approval process, do me a favor and fill out the information in the link below. Now, the last mistake I want to talk about in today's video is one for many home buyers to overcome, and that is failing to act quickly. Home buyers want to move at their own pace, and I completely understand that. You never want to be rushed in to buying anything. And it can often seem like realtors are really pushy when they say, hey, look, if you're interested in this property, we need to make an offer today because they're reviewing them today and or tomorrow. So it may seem like the listing agent is kind of pushing you to make an offer so that they can make money, but that's simply not it. Oftentimes, as we've mentioned, homes are getting multiple offers and sellers have deadlines on when they want to see offers in so that they can review them all at the same time. And unfortunately, if you're not willing to act quickly, there's a really good chance that your offer isn't going to be considered. Now, if you're okay with that, then it's not a problem at all. But oftentimes, buyers fall in love with properties, which is something you really shouldn't do if we're being honest. You should never fall in love with a property until you actually have the keys in your hand, because there's a million things that can go wrong in the process. But I do know it's an emotional process and buyers are going to fall in love. So if you're one of those people that does fall in love with property, you need to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, that you've done the pre-approval, that you've already listed your property. Hopefully you're in escrow on that property like we mentioned earlier. At the same time, hopefully you're willing to sacrifice a little bit on that condition, and more importantly, you've got that pre-approval wrapped up so that if you are in a rush to make a property, you have all the documentation you need that day in order to write a strong offer. Now, if you're a home buyer watching this and you're like, Jeb, I understand all of that, I agree with all of that, but I'm just not able to qualify for the home that I want to qualify for. What other things do I need to think about when buying a home in 2024? Well, I actually created a video that goes over all of that information that you can find right here.